Now he is actually running with the gun to the side. It's impossible to shoot in that speed, or not impossible, but it's very difficult to shoot. And he is just looking straight ahead or at the ground, and he is not in a position to shoot either. So if I look at him from a side like this, let's say I'll hit F and I'll move it around here, and now you can see that he's doing that. Okay, and if I slow him down a bit, and now you can see that he is more in a running position, and now he is moving his weapon up in a way that he can shoot. And as I move up again and the speed increases, his weapon lowers down in a position where he's simply focused on sprinting or running really fast. Great. Okay, so all of these remaining, about 4 points remaining, and this is sprint backward in place. In fact, I'll make this as run backward in place. If I can see that, yeah, run backward in place. There you go, and run backward in place. And I'll finish off these points, the edges here, and this would be, if this is run, then this should be sprint backward in place. If I can see that, there it is, sprint backward in place and sprint backward in place, and this is sprint forward in place. And this would be sprint left in place, sprint backward left in place, and this would be sprint backward right in place. Right, so now if I move my marker here, and I can see that he is slowing down, he's got the weapon up, and this should be, he'll be running to the left, and if I do that, he'll be running to the right. And then if I do this, he's going to be sprinting towards the back, and he's going to be sprinting right in place. And if I do that like this, and he's going to be sprinting backwards, straight backwards, and this, he's going to run forward. And you can see this blend, which is nice. And now he starts sprinting, and now he's going to be sprinting left, and then again he starts sprinting backwards in a straight line. So that's all cool. So the animations have been set up, so I'm going to save this. Okay, so now if I go back to my third person character, go back to my event graph, these are all the movement variables that you have. You have is crouching and base turn rate and so on. And we did the exact same thing for the crouch. We had a crouch variable, so we'll have something similar. So I can control W because I need another Boolean variable for sprinting. So instead of is crouching, it's going to be is sprinting. Simple, is sprinting. Okay, and that's also a Boolean. So next up, we're going to need an action event. In order to invoke an action event, we need to have an action key. So again, going back to project settings, we'll have to set this up out here. And for crouch, we have these keys. That's a left and the right shift. And for the sprint, let's see, sprint, we're going to need an alt. I'm going to use an alt. You can go ahead and map it the way you like. It doesn't matter. These are my preferences, like I said earlier. So you can have your preferences, and it's all going to be cool. So this will be alt key, and that will be the left alt, and I can make it to the right alt as well. Right alt. There you go. And I don't need to save this. That's all there. And I'll have to do the same thing for this as well. Something very similar. So I'll first bring in the event or the input action. So I'll look for a sprint. And that's the action event. Okay, and this will be something like so. Okay, so now I'm gonna bring in my sprint, and I'm gonna set it first. I will put it up here, and I'll say if it's pressed, when I press the sprint key, I want the is sprinting to be true, and then I just want the max speed. So first I'll bring in my character movement and drop it here in the center, and I'll just give it a space, and then I'll just say set the max walk speed, and move it here, connect this, and the max speed, because it's sprint, will be 1000. Okay, and then again for the released, I'll set it up again like that, released, and this will be false the way we want. And then again, we will say set max walk speed to back to 600, like that. Great. Now when I hit compile and save, it's going to save everything and no issues there. And so this is how we set up our in crouch and sprint. Now it's all set up in the third person character, like we did for crouch and everything else. We'll have to go back to animation blueprint and we have to set up a new state for the sprint as well. Now this is walk and run, that's cool, but we also have to have something for sprint, and then it can also go from idle to sprint and crouched, from crouching to sprint, or from walk and run to sprint. So all of that is going to get added now. Okay, so now the way this works is, actually you can't really go to sprint from idle. You have to go through walk and run, and from walk and run you can go to sprint, because you can't really sprint without, we cannot override the state to get down to sprint. You have to pass through the state. So the only connection that we're going to make from walk and run is we're going to make a connection from here. And we're just going to make a connection from walk and run over to an add state. I'll create a new state and call this sprint. Printing. Okay. And then of course, and also add a connection back to walk and run. So that completes the transition. So you cannot really, the way this works, it's quite simple if you look at it. Enter the animation state, you're going to be idle, and you can either choose to crouch, you can either choose to walk, and if you choose to run, then of course you have to go through the walk and run, and then only can you sprint. You can't directly hit the speed of 600. You have to go from 0 to 300 to 600, and then from there you'll go over 2000. Okay, so that's the way it's set up. And if you hit compile and save that, and when I double click on sprinting, now I'll have to set up the blend space for this. So we'll bring in the sprint blend space and drop it in here, and then connect these two guys. And now we'll have to do the same thing for direction and speed as well. Okay, so I'm going to hook up my direction out here, and I'm going to hook up the speed out here, and then hit compile. And of course it's going to give me errors, but I'm aware, and it says walk run to sprinting will never be taken. Please connect something to can enter transition. So when I go back to walk run, and if I click on these two icons here, so the first thing is I'm going to go over from walk run to sprinting. So if I double click on that, this is what the similar node comes up. It opens up into the similar node. Now again, if I go back to third person character, this is sprinting and is crouching. So if I go back here, I'm also going to expect a variable called is crouching inside my animation blueprint. So I'll click on variable and I'll call this is sprinting. Okay, and I'll compile. Now of course this has got nothing here, so I'll go back to my event graph, and if I look here, then I can see that this is for sprint, this is for crouch, this is for the walk and run thing. So we're gonna need one more pin where we can have it for sprint. So I'm going to click that, and then again I'm going to say a cast to third person character. Okay, and move it here, maybe here, I guess. Yeah, I think I'll just move this a little bit down like that, so that it looks a little more organized at least. And then again I'll have to get pawn owner. So once I get the pawn owner, that's the reference I'm looking for. And once I do that, I think I'll just move this up a little bit like that. Okay, so that's uniform.